Elevate Leadership podcast is intended to inspire existing leaders and those who aspire to lead. Hi, I'm Liz Mosley Hawkins, Director of Marketing and Communications for South Carolina State University's 1890 Research and Extension. I am so excited because today we are launching our new podcast, and it's called Elevate Leadership. But before we go any further, I just want to take a few seconds to tell you a little bit about 1890 Research and Extension. We, of course, are affiliated with South Carolina State University, and we provide life-changing services and programs to our constituents all across the state of South Carolina, as well as conducts cutting-edge research that seeks to find solutions for issues impacting individuals, families, and communities. We have about 7 offices throughout the state, and we touch about 36 of the 42 counties. So that's a brief overview about 1890 Research and Extension, where we innovate, educate, and elevate. Now, I'm so excited, of course, for our premiere. Today, we have with us Dr. Lewis Whitesides, Executive Director of 1890 Research and Extension. Dr. Whitesides, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Liz. It's such an honor to be at 1890's first Elevate Leadership podcast.
Absolutely, and I'm excited to be able to host this and to be able to bring this product to our constituents. I think it's something that's really needed. So thank you so much again for coming.
Thank you.
So my very first question to you, I gave a little overview about 1890 Research and Extension, but who best would be able to tell us a little bit more about the organization? You took the helm in September of last year, so we're coming up on your 1-year anniversary. Talk to me a little bit about the accomplishments that the organization has achieved so far.
Well, it's a lot of different things and a lot of small things, which I think is important. Our organization, one, has grown. We have grown about 10% since I took over in August 1st. The major accomplishments, I would say, is the reorganization of our, division. First thing we did, we took a look at where we were in the state, what programs we were offering, who our constituents were. So it was a full assessment of the total organization as a whole. And from that, we came up with our plan of action. What resources, as far as people go, that we could infuse into our communities that we serve to best serve their needs. So, we do programs in agriculture. Agriculture is a big deal in South Carolina, $45 million. $45 billion, my fault. The leading industry in our state, responsible for 200,000 jobs. So agriculture is a big deal, and our roots are in agriculture. So, of course, agriculture is going to stay at the top of the list for us, and we're there. We're investing in agriculture. We're doing a lot of things in the agricultural area. So we need to make sure that we were still true to our agricultural roots. Then from that, we have two different things, two competing things, I think, as far as what our next priorities. Youth. We talk about our kids. We talk about the kids of the state. We talk about our local kids. Kids are always in the news, whether good or bad. Kids are something that everyone can get behind. Mm-hmm. So we had to look at what programs we were offering our youth and how could we enhance it, how can we keep their attention. Mm-hmm. These kids' attention spans these days are just so short.
Right.
So traditional programming that, organizations offer are really losing steam when it comes to dealing with the youth of today. Mm-hmm. So we had to look at how do we retool ourselves to capture their attention, keep their attention, all while moving them to a position of more information, better decision making, and ultimately success. So our youth was a real focus of us that we focused on. And then you get to health. Health is a big deal. COVID is here. It has really pulled the top off of people with, health problems and things like that. So family nutrition and health is one of our reorganized kind of areas that we focus on. We called it family life before, but it's family nutrition and health. We're going to deal with family, the family structure, make sure our families are strong. But in the health standpoint, if you think about what happens a lot of times when we go to the doctor, they'll say, oh, your cholesterol is a little high, or your blood pressure a little elevated, something like that. You need to eat healthier. Or they might give you a brochure or a pamphlet. People are creatures of repetition and tradition and things like that. So what we have to do is to provide healthy, good tasting alternatives to what their lifestyle is now to make them live longer and longevity and things like that. So we've come up with great programs for healthy eating, healthy cooking, those kind of things. And furthermore, them having a better understanding of what does it mean if the doctor says I have diabetes? What does it mean if I have high blood pressure, hypertension? How does it affect me? How does it affect my family? What do I need to do different so I can be here long term to see my grandkids grow up and those kind of things? So all those questions people have walking out of the doctor's office. And, you know, and when I go back to think about my grandmother had all of these things, you know, that's prevalent in our community. And she told me, hey, you know I got sugar, right? Sugar? What is sugar?
Sugar diabetes.
I know, but the way she said it was so funny. But then she didn't want to eat and do anything any different. She was so stubborn, did not want to eat to do anything any different. So we had to provide avenues where people want to do different and break the traditional kind of things that we've learned and that sort of thing. So that's family, nutrition, and health. Okay. So next we have our community economic development. Our small business is the backbone of our community. So we have to work more closely with our small businesses to help them thrive and hire more employees. Now that we're about to go into a recession, small businesses are going to be the lifeblood of our country. So reconnecting or a better connection with our small businesses is going to be crucial. So that's one piece of it that we actually retooled also and actually rolled out. And then you have education. You have education. Now, education has been in the news for numerous amounts of years. And universities do a really good job of connecting with K-12 institutions. How many of them tie themselves together with K-12 institutions? That's what we're going to do.
Full integration.
Full integration, correct. When a kid cannot read by the 3rd grade, you can almost predict where they're going to go. So we have to expand our Smart Academy program into, into areas across the state that does not have reading programs, or to catch kids up. When a kid gets behind, there's no mechanism in school to catch them up.
Right. And
they normally labeled LD or they're in special ed and that sort of thing because they just can't read. We're going to provide that stop. We're going to provide that gap in there to do so. So in a nutshell, it's a whole lot going on, a whole lot more I can go into. But those are the exciting pieces of what's happening at 1890.
And one of the other exciting pieces is this podcast, Elevate Leadership. This is just one of the many marketing tools that we're using to further reach our constituents. Tell me, why is it important to 1890 to offer Elevate Leadership podcast?
Great question. Leadership is what's needed now more than ever in our communities. Leadership is what's needed not only in our local communities, in our state, in the Southeast, in the nation. And as leaders become more informed, as leaders become better leaders, you will see our whole community just take a step. The name of our podcast, Elevate the whole community around it. So we thought in taking an actual platform where we can expose leaders to leaders and have different leaders on that give their thoughts, how they got to where they were, kind of what their thoughts are on current events and what's happening, projecting out. It'll provoke some thought by other leaders. And that would spur them making better decisions that kind of, again, elevate our total community and that sort of thing. So it's a way for people to connect with leaders, think about leadership, and then on top of that, everyone is a leader in some standpoint.
Right.
Whether it's at your home, you could be leading yourself.
Right.
So everyone needs to look at themselves as a leader. We wanted to create a platform where leadership would be discussed, talked about, debated, and therefore everyone would be better off for it.
Great. Thank you so much. Now we're going to take a quick break.
Why should young people care about the spread of coronavirus? Well, we know that people with underlying medical conditions over the age of 60 are at highest risk, but they've got to get it from somebody.
So we're asking everyone to be selfless for others so that we can protect those who are most susceptible.
Not going to bars, not going to restaurants. It all just means physical separation so that you have a space between you and others.
For more information on how you can social distance, please go to coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for South Carolina State University's 1890 Research and Extension Elevate Leadership Podcast. Let's finish our conversation with Dr. Lewis Whitesides. So, Dr. Whitesides, it is no secret, the world is dealing with a global pandemic, the coronavirus, and that the virus has totally shifted the way that we operate, the way that 1890 Research and Extension operates. And one of the things that stood out to me is how you had the foresight to, even before the virus hit the U.S., to have us begin preparing for the virus. What was it about the pandemic that set off an alarm for you?
Well, it was a few things. One, having an international business background, I studied things on the international stage. And as I saw this, it just kind of caught my attention, like, something is not right. Something is happening. The news is talking about it a little bit, but the Chinese were scrambling. And anytime you see something scrambling, you really got to pay attention. But the president, President Clark, he got way out in front of it. It was like, listen, this is going to hit, this is going to be bad. A lot of people was just like, oh man, you kind of overreacted. But he kind of got way out in front of it and was like, listen, this is not going to be some small thing that everyone's talking about.
Right.
So, Liz, what we did is we kind of took it and we said, okay, what is the worst case scenario? What's the worst that can happen? So we had to do a review of our programs. We had to talk about our people,
Right.
Where they work, where the facility's safe, just so many different things we had to look at. Emergency contact list. How do we contact employees, outside of our normal work? We had to make sure our contact list was up. Even, social media. Is social media something that we can use to contact people and get information out?
Right.
So we had to really look at our total program as a whole as to, can we deliver programs? Can we check on our folks if need be?
Right.
What happens if one of our folks contract coronavirus? What do we do?
Yeah.
Are our facilities, clean enough? Do we have the supplies we need to combat this? Depending, so it was so many different scenarios happening, so many things happening, and so we had to elevate and we had to initiate threat levels. And I think we did an excellent job at doing that. But the university did an excellent job at doing it. I can honestly say, I can't speak for other universities, but South Carolina State and the leadership here did an excellent job in preparing and transitioning the actual university from traditional to online courses for our students. I don't think any university did it better than we did it here. But as far as 1890, we have a different section to us because we're in the community.
Right.
So we have community partners. All community partners have their own standards. They have their own rules and regulations. So we had to review all of those. We had to make contact with our partners. What's your stance on this? Can we still get in? Can we not? So it was so many unknowns to deal with.
And leading to that, with the coronavirus, there is no coronavirus playbook.
No.
Right?
Exactly.
And so we had, a lot of what we had to do was just on the fly. I mean, we were strategic about it, but
Yes.
but it was on the fly. And so a lot of our programs, as you mentioned, they're high touch. You know, we are very much in the community with our programs and services. So how were you able to manage a staff that was, you know, everybody was at home? One thing I do want to say is that you made sure that everybody had all the necessary resources that we needed. But in terms of being mission driven, how were you able to manage staff and still make sure that we remain on mission while we were not working in our physical spaces?
We had to talk about communication. How do we communicate? Communication went from traditional meeting in a conference room, meeting in an office, those kind of things, our researchers in the laboratories, to how do we communicate with the pandemic. So we had to review all the different platforms. You know, you had Zoom, you had WebEx, you had Microsoft Teams. We had to review all of those and see exactly which was the best fit for us and our constituents. And we had to make sure we had access to all three because our constituents might not be on the same platform we on. That's number one. Number two, our employees at home had to be able to communicate with us. So issuing 1890 laptops to all of our staff that was home, you know, we had to do that. You know, a good thing for us was we had some. And most staff had laptops. The ones that did not, we was able to issue.
Yes.
So the communication was solved in that standpoint. Now, it was a pullback from all of our traditional kind of offerings because we couldn't go to the schools were closed.
Right.
We couldn't go to community centers were closed.
Right.
You know, we couldn't pay visits to the businesses because they were all closed.
Exactly.
So the digital platform is where I think we made a super adjustment. And again, that was, and thanks to you and your staff and what actually happened. So launching the webinar, you know, our first webinar was a super success. You know, now we launching this podcast. You know, that's a big deal. Then we had the 1890 at Home series, you know, which is really got rave reviews and that sort of thing, launching them every week.
Right.
So our staff was really dynamic in the sense of being creative and them coming up with the different topics and things like that we had to, and shooting the videos themselves to be, you know, produced afterwards by, you know, by the staff. So our staff did an excellent job in making the transition. So it was just really, my role was facilitating all the talent and all the expertise and things we actually had. So when this thing was rolling downhill fast, we was like, okay, we got to make these adjustments. We were out front, in front of it, and said, look, it can't catch us, and we stayed out in front of it, and right now we're still out in front of it. So the avalanche has not caught up to us, and that's a great position to be in. So we've always been 2 or 3 steps ahead of what's happening, and as long as we stay in that position, we'll be okay.
And so a lot of times people say, one of the things that people say about crises is that it is a learning opportunity, right? Don't run away from crises because you're sure to learn something. So what have you learned as a leader so far in managing this particular crisis?
The thing that kind of jumps out the most is our processes and procedures, how we operate. That review has probably been the toughest thing our organization has to tackle, and we're still going through it.
Because you like to say that we operate as a government.
And you know, everyone
We're
knows
too
government.
slow.
Every government moves so slow, and with everyone being at home, and think about it, no one can get physical signatures. So now, being able to sign things online using a digital platform, and then it made us ask the question, how many people actually need to sign something to be executed?
Right, right.
You know, so we begin to have those conversations that made us a much better organization. Now, we had some control issues with some folks inside that everybody used to signing documents and didn't want to give up their signature authority. But, you know, we had to kind of, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to move forward. And outside of that, to kind of take up the time and the space that we would be out conducting classes, our folks underwent a rigorous training schedule. So, we identified trainings at all levels of our organization should be proficient at, and we put them out there. And our staff will participate in those trainings from the start to now, so you can see the dividends being paid, the dividends being paid right now because they participated. So each week, every level of the organization was responsible for taking 3.5 to 4 hours of training that was online. And that has really helped us to retool. So when this is over, we're going to be stronger, better, smarter, and more efficient than ever.
You're right, Dr. Whitesides. We will be a better organization because of that. And we'll be back. And we're with Dr. Lewis Whitesides. And Dr. Whitesides, our conversation has focused on how you've led 1890 research and extension amid this global pandemic that we know as the coronavirus. So I kind of want to talk to you now about the future of businesses and organizations and in what ways you see they will modify their practices on account of the coronavirus.
Well, Liz, that's a tough question and an easy question. The easy part of it is they will have to adjust. The tough part is the tough part of the question is how much adjustments are they willing to make? When you look at retail, retail as we know it is going away. So anyone in the retail business, if they're not selling online or trying to get online as quickly as possible to build a clientele, they will not be around in the long run.
And let me tell you, that is killing me because I'm the type of person, I need to be in the store. It literally took me 2 hours to buy clothes for my son because I couldn't put outfits together. So I'm just not built for online shopping. But I guess I have no choice. I have to get used to it.
You're going to have to. It's not going anyway. And just think about Amazon. Let's talk about technology, companies in general. And technology companies take a real beating about being too big and too large. But where would we be during the pandemic without Amazon, Facebook,
absolutely, right,
Netflix, even Google, Microsoft being on your computer?
Yes.
Just where would we be without these companies? Now, I think these companies will continue to grow. They're going to get bigger and bigger, and it's going to have more scrutiny. But small businesses is going to have to adopt digital technology into their offerings, or they will not be around. And I mean, you can have discussions about whatever else you can have, but that is going to be the basis for their survival.
Yeah.
And reality is, a lot of them will not survive. A lot of them will not survive. They're not going to be able to make the transition because they're already so far behind. But if they have a fighting chance, it's going to be based in technology.
And so talk to me a little bit. I mean, you said that a lot of businesses are going to have to change, modify their business practices. And 1890 Research and Extension is no different. I mean, we talked previously about our programs and, what makes us so successful is our ability to actually touch people. And, we're preparing to return to campus and, hopefully ramp back up some of our programs. Yet and still, though, we're going to have to adjust. Yeah. And so what does the future of 1890 hold?
1890 will have to deliver our programs in a multitude of platforms. And some we talked about already. We are a touchy-feely organization. That's what separates us from a lot of organizations. We'll do programs in your community. We'll do them at your house. We'll do them wherever the need exists. But now in our new environment, we can't do that. But there will be some traditional programming, and being a touchy-feely organization is not going to go away. But we have to have different modes also. So, our webinar series is going to reach a certain number of people, a segment of people. This podcast is going to reach a certain number of people. But then again, outside of that, we have to do online courses. As we retooling right now and developing our new curriculum offerings to be released later this year, an online component is being developed also. So you'll be able to get your in-person if you want it, but you can get it online also. So that's the adjustment that we're actually making. And it helps us because it's really going to put more of a spotlight on the expertise that our agents have going out.
Yes.
Because if you think about before, someone would call one of our regional offices and say, oh, I have this need, that sort of thing. The touchy-feely person in us is, okay, let's set up an appointment, I'm going to come out and see you.
Right.
Now we're going to have to make appointments using Microsoft Teams or using Zoom to do it online. And so that platform will allow us to save a lot of time, for one, reach a whole lot more people, you know, and allow us to follow up with the person on site if need to. So we'll be able to, you know, help the people that don't need, that really doesn't need the on-site touchy-feely kind of thing, and still be able to serve the people that do. But now, the biggest piece of that is getting a lot of traction in COVID right now that we really need to talk more about is the underserved community that we're tasked to actually offer our services to and focus on. A lot of them don't have access to broadband.
Yes.
So
Yes.
now, how do they participate in this new world without access to broadband and computers and things like that? So
Right.
that's a segment of people that we really have to focus on. We really have to come up with a way to reach them in this area. Now, we're not going to be able to solve that problem on our own. I'm glad that the state of South Carolina is addressing that.
In
The
Orangeburg
nation-
County.
In Orangeburg County. Yeah. My county, Orangeburg
Yes,
County,
yes.
is looking into it. You know, Mr. Young and them, Harold Young down at Orangeburg County and them, and John Yao at the city, and those guys are doing an excellent job of trying to make sure broadband runs through the areas that's not served.
Right.
And so those folks are my biggest concern because they're not going to be able to connect. And then you have to have broadband these days. It
Right.
can't just be dial-up. It can't be a slow connection, or you're not going to get the full use of your computers and things like that. Everything
It's
has
that
flash
whole
now.
digital
It's-
divide
exactly.
concept, you know,
have to
haves
it,
and
it's-
have-nots.
And it's still here. And we've been talking about it for 20 years. We've
Right.
been talking about the digital divide when it came, but now more than ever, it's showing its head.
Yes.
And our kids in our rural areas are just being left behind and left out. So that is the future of 1890, but the biggest problem we need to solve is the broadband digital divide issue in our communities.
Great. So I just want to segue because you mentioned something that's gaining traction.
Okay.
Pretty soon, we will be having a ribbon cutting ceremony for our Camp Daniels.
Yes.
And I know that for a lot of people, they've been waiting for that. Although what's going to happen is just a smidgen of what's on the horizon.
Yes.
Talk to us a little bit about Camp Daniels and why this is important to you.
Man, when you talk about Camp Daniels, growing up here, I went to summer camp at Camp Daniels, starting at 8 years old. Camp Daniels was the highlight of really our year as kids. We went to summer camp. You know, you got to swim in the lake, you got to do all this 4-H stuff, and it was a big deal. Thousands and thousands and thousands of kids across the state had a chance to have an affordable experience for summer camp. And not only that, my mother went to 4-H with Camp Daniels.
Wow.
And my uncles went.
Wow.
You know, so we talking about people in their 70s and 80s. When I'm on the street right now, people say, oh man, what's going on with Camp Daniels? What's going on with Camp Daniels? I went there as a kid, and they stop and tell me all kinds of stories about
Right.
Camp Daniels that they had in the 50s and 60s. And so it was a real, man, it was a real setback for Camp Daniels to be closed. One thing that we has a high priority is to get Camp Daniels back open and going.
And
go
one
ahead.
of the ways, because essentially, as we're talking about leadership, it will serve as a hub to train our future leaders.
It will. The lifelong friendships that you learn there, and even the life skills and the leadership skills you learn at Camp Daniels. Camp Daniels spurred me as a kid. Things that happened, I came home, and I tell you a quick story. I thought I was a really good basketball player, and I went to Camp Daniels, and these kids just man, beat me and talked trash to me, and I was just so sick and upset, me being the competitor that I am.
Yeah.
So I rode the bus home, man, upset, pouting, and I got home and told my mother, I said, listen, man, she said, how you like camp? I said, I hated camp.
Uh-oh.
She said, well, I said, man, I lost basketball, such and such, and I was telling the story. So my mother went out and bought me a basketball goal and taught me my jump shot that paid dividends over the years. And she taught me how to play, and I practiced every day until I went back to Camp Daniels that next year. And that next year
You
I went
were
to camp,
determined.
I was determined. And that was probably the first goal, long-term goal I had in my life, was to go back and beat these boys who beat me and talk trash.
Wow.
And I beat them. Let me make that clear. I beat them.
Make no mistake about
That's
it.
right. That's right. So you know, and it's funny. I see these guys now. We talk. We still talk about it and that sort of thing. But that's what it spurred in me, and that's what it spurred in thousands of people across the state. You know, people across the nation now. You know, I get emails now about what's going on with Camp Daniels, what's such and such. You know, as I first took the position, people called, what you gonna do at Camp Daniels? You gonna do at Camp Daniels? Camp Daniels. So Camp Daniels is something, you know, we released a video last week, kind of take a look at what we've done and let people know things are happening.
Right.
But they don't know what they're in for when we have our opening at the end of next month.
They don't.
They do not. And I can tell you, when they see it, it's gonna be dynamic. It's gonna be awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, look, Dr. Whitesides, before we wrap up, you know, Elevate Leadership Podcast is intended to inspire existing leaders and those who aspire to lead. What can you say to people who are listening or watching us today to inspire them to be the best leaders that they can be?
Two things. One, a leader has to lead from the bottom. You're at the top, but you lead not just for you, you lead the person at the lowest point of the totem pole in your organization. And so as you make decisions, you need to make decisions to make sure that everyone is included in your decision making and not just benefit the few. When I look at 1890 and I guess South Carolina State, and I look at what this university did for me growing up, and you know my story. I call it from homeless to Hollywood. You know, I was a homeless kid here at South Carolina State, you know, created a pathway for me to be where I am right now. And as a leader, you have to make sure that you carve out a direction for people to follow you. So you have to leave your position so someone else can follow you, and the organization is a much better place than what you left it. But the person at the lowest end of the totem pole can aspire to and get to where you are. Because I started as a grant employee that lost my job when the grant wasn't funded and was out for 2 years before I came back to the organization as an extension agent and worked my way up to this. So it's a really, really good story. When I think back over my life and the humble beginnings that I actually had and that sort of thing, I can see where I've come into contact with various leaders in the community and things like that always encourage you along the way, different programs that were put out there that I've benefited from. And I think at 1890 we have an obligation to do the same thing for the kids that's out there right now that probably can't see where they fit in and where they make it. So that's the touchy-feely kind of piece that 1890 has to continue to provide to the citizens of South Carolina. We have to be able to show them that whatever you're going through right now is temporary. You just got to keep your eyes focused on where you want to go, and you'll get there. And I guess the saying I always have in my mind is, he who thinketh and believeth can do it. And so if you think you can do something and you believe you can do it, you can actually do it. You got to put your mind to it and make it work. So with that, that's kind of, in a nutshell, kind of how I look at leadership, and you know, that's what.
Great. Well, I certainly enjoyed our conversation today. It's at a point in time where we are with the coronavirus and, just picking your brain to find out how you were able to lead this organization, again, during such a critical time, not just locally, but globally. And I appreciate your leadership. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, of course, for our very first podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And I want to say, Liz, I guess I want to say thank you to you and your staff, because we've asked you all to do a whole lot in a short period of time. And a lot of times you think about putting a podcast together, a webinar together, the at-home series, a lot of digital, formats and frameworks, and coming up with the concepts of production schedules and those kind of things. The way y'all were able to pull us together so quickly. I know it took long hours. It took
Yes.
yeah, a lot of long hours, a lot of discussion and disagreements, how this is supposed to go. But I want to say I appreciate it, and I think the digital platform, as I said before, is the way that we reach our audience and continue to grow our organization. And it's probably one of the most important pieces that we actually have. So again, congratulations on just a job well done in launching these things and continued success.
Sounds like job stability to me. Thank you so much, Dr. Whitesides. And thank you for joining us again for the premiere of our podcast, Elevate Leadership. You're watching Elevate Leadership, powered by South Carolina State University's 1890 Research and Extension.